All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Bryson White. It's good to be before you all today. Excited to have another conversation around in the Justice interview series with Pastor B.T. Lewis today. So just a quick bit about Faith in the Valley. Again, I'm Bryson White. I'm the regional faith coordinator for Faith in the Valley, and the Faith in the Valley, and our community partners. We believe that a different and better future is possible for the Central Valley if we work together. We believe that a future in which everyone is included, treated as sacred, has a chance to thrive and live a healthy, decent life in the Central Valley. A future in which no one is seen as less than or lives in fear because of the color of their skin, their legal status, or the amount of money they earn. A future where everyone has access to good jobs, clean air, clean water, alternatives to incarceration, quality health care, and safe neighborhoods. Faith in the Valley Justice interview series, which you are tuning into right now, are a set of conversations that highlight the role of faith and justice in organizing in the Central Valley. We have discussed the role of interpretations of Scripture and its role in doing justice, the intersection between religion and mass incarceration, Christian perspectives on abolitionism and conceptions of nonviolence, understanding creation care and responsibility to proper land use, amongst other topics. Today, we'll be having the second part of a discussion around COVID-19 and the responsibility of the church. Last conversation, we had this topic with, we explored this topic with Pastor DJ Kreiner. And today we welcome Pastor Booker Lewis, pastor of the Rising Star Missionary Baptist Church in Fresno. Fresno, California. So here's a brief introduction of Pastor Lewis, who I'm biased towards, who is a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, and someone that I work closely with in the field of community organizing and ministry in Fresno. Pastor Lewis has served as the under shepherd of the Rising Star Missionary Baptist Church of Fresno, California, since August of 2003. Under his dynamic and progressive leadership, Rising Star has become a solid, influential ministry with an effective mission presence locally and abroad. Rising Star is committed to building peace and unity in our community and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout our city. Pastor Lewis has been married to Letitia Lewis for almost 39 years. They have 3 children, Shamika, Booker, Shanice, and 1 grandson, Ashton. I like that name, Ashton. Pastor Lewis serves as the chairman of the Fresno Citywide Revival Committee, the moderator emeritus and former executive board member of First Northern Central District Baptist Association, president of the West Fresno Faith-Based Organization, member of the Fresno chapter of the NAACP and our local chapter of BAPAC, and chairman of the African American Clergy Caucus of Fresno, California. Pastor Lewis is an active missionary locally in Haiti and in Jamaica. His leadership in our community bodes well for the reputation of the church locally and abroad. So we welcome you today, Pastor Lewis. How you doing?
Oh, good, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's hop into the questions. So the first question I have for you, Pastor, is how have you navigated the COVID-19 pandemic as a pastor? Specifically, how have you walked with your congregation during this time? For example, how did visiting the old, the sick, and the shut-in shift and change?
Well, again, thank you for having me on your program today. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share with you. My relationship with our congregation is pretty unique. I've been back in Fresno pastoring for 18 years, but I've known this congregation for over 40 years, as my daddy was their former pastor. In fact, our relationship is unique. I like to tell folk about that because not only did I know do I know your mother, and did I know your father? I knew your granddaddy and your great-granddaddy.
Yeah, that's right.
Your great-grandfather was a deacon here at the Rising Star Missionary Baptist Church. Like, I love to say that. People say, how you know that many generations of them? Anyway, when COVID hit, as a general philosophy, we listened to the mandates of our state and our county. We listened to the recommendations that we received from governing officials, but then we also were determined to weigh that against biblical demands and mandate and our relationship with the Creator. We prayed about how we would do that. Of course, the kind of worship style of worship, the makeup of your congregation, and the facility play a lot into how you adjust and adapt to changing circumstances. And so Rise and Star never quit doing ministry. We're open every day. And so the way we do ministry changed dramatically throughout the week and on Sunday. And so we've always had some skeleton of ministry, even on Sundays. We never stopped. We never closed the church because we don't believe the church is the building. We never closed the church, and so we were able, I think, pretty successfully to continue to do ministry. We had to adjust how we do food programs, how we interact with our folks. We were very protective of our elderly, and we encouraged them to stay home. This forced us to adapt. We had a website and we had the means of online giving, but we never really pushed online giving, but the mechanism was in place. And so praise God for that. And so we were able to easily transition a considerable amount of our giving to online giving, and to also use Facebook Live and other social media platforms in order to keep our congregation connected in worship on Sundays and in Bible studies and meetings. Our elderly, they love it. They love it because they found that they were able to participate in meetings and in Bible studies during the week, whereas in the past they felt limited and unable to drive, unable to come out at night. And so now they are active, I think, more than they were pre-pandemic. I will say this that it did also show us that the digital divide in our community is real. Many of our about 50% of our congregation don't have the capacity to use video for worship, for meetings, and for connection with the church. And so many times you'll see, for instance, on Zoom, you'll see that they're dialed in on the phone. They're listening on the phone. And so that's a real significant, still a very significant problem in some of our poorest communities, is that we just don't have the resources, and then we don't have the infrastructure available to us, even if we had the resources to really connect in the way that other areas of our city are able to connect. And so our church has, by the grace of God, done amazingly well during this period. It has never been in danger of closing or shutting down. We've even incorporated some outside activities, outside services during the summer, where I've done revivals where we've had allowed a limited number of people in the sanctuary, and I've done an outside revival during the summer where we did it in our parking lot, and all of those things went very well. So we have been determined to continue to do ministry, to continue to serve our community, and to continue to lift up Jesus and the goals of our faith in spite of this pandemic.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's interesting how the pandemic revealed the digital divide. I'm wondering, this it wasn't sort of on the scripted question, but I'm wondering going forward what congregations can do to help bridge that digital divide. Since we're living in a digital world, that's not going away. Yeah, what kind of recommendations would you have around that, around something that congregations can do to help facilitate closing the gap on digital divides that you just mentioned and that COVID exposed?
Well, I do. One project comes to mind, authored by Anthony Bailey from over at Westside Church of God, called the Moses Project, and we also signed up for that, where he has a project with that has been funded to help smaller churches to get the kind of equipment that they need and training that they need in order to be better prepared to do streaming on a regular basis. And so I know a number of our churches have signed up for that project. And so I think that it has called to our attention the necessity in this new age of communication and interaction, the necessity for the church to change some of our traditions. I don't do the traditional 2-hour Baptist service anymore. We got that down to an hour. Praise the Lord.
Man.
And it has gone tremendously well. It has gone tremendously well. And so, I think that some churches are still struggling. I didn't struggle as hard because I'm an old school nerd. And so because I'm an old school nerd, and what I mean by that, that was my profession before I started pastoring full time. And because I was an old school nerd, though, this transition was natural for me to train my congregation and to get a media team in place on Sundays that could set up the proper equipment and get us ready to do worship and realistically to attract worshipers from all across the country.
Yeah, no, that's it. Thank you for lifting that up. I know that you adjusted well. That you mentioned you're an old school nerd. You're a tech person, so that transition wasn't that difficult for you. The second question is connected to the first, but what measures did you put in place to provide safety for your congregation, at the same time providing space for their spiritual needs?
Well, our older crowd, Doc, this is something that I think the older you are, and the longer you've been on this earth and been involved in worship and our traditional system of worship, I think it was harder for you to really wrap your head around what was happening in our community. And I had some 92, 93-year-old mothers. Man, I had to sit down and actually tell them and of course, like I said, I've known them for over 40 years, Doc. I can talk to them in a different way. And I sat down and had to tell them, baby, you need to stay home. You need to stay home, and perhaps we need to send somebody over to your home, help you get situated so you can dial into service and help them to get the technical assistance that they need in order to stay connected with the church. But we had to, some folk was determined to come to church. And so, like I said, as the pandemic got worse, we went down to just a skeleton crew of people that was necessary in order to carry worship. So that could be about 10 folk. We have discontinued our choir until further notice. But we do a praise team model every Sunday. So, about 10 folk. 7 to 10 folk can carry worship. And so we do that. And then as things got a little better, we start allowing a few more people in the sanctuary. Overall, we allow about 50% in our sanctuary at the most today. And then, like I said, most of our attendance will be on Zoom and on Facebook and other platforms. And so, but yeah, we had to do that. We also purchased some PPE equipment, some shields for our desk areas, plexiglass shields for our desk areas. We purchased some plexiglass for our pulpit area and kind of manage that process as well. We work with our county and our African American Coalition and our St. Rest CDC, who helped to manage the process for churches in our community. They acted as the financial agent, and we encouraged all of our churches to purchase PPE and they were able to do that because there was funding set aside by our city and our county to help us to retrofit our buildings, retrofit our churches, touchless faucets, touchless soap dispensers, touchless this and that. Throughout the sanctuary, and we were able to get reimbursed for those purchases. So we did a lot of retrofitting of our buildings. We did a lot of retrofitting of our worship practices, and so like I said, we fog our church still every Sunday morning. We fog our church. And if get too busy during the week, we'll fog it during the week to try to disinfect anything that's going on in the building. And so we have put some things in place that would never have been thought of pre-pandemic.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if that's going to be kind of a new normal practice going forward. Not even just for the pandemic, but even for flu season. This flu also affects
Mhm.
our older congregants as well. I'm wondering if this sort of like next level cleanliness
Oh
is
yeah,
going.
we're wearing masks. Of course, we're washing our hands more. You keep your mask on in the sanctuary unless you're speaking, singing, or something. And we try to keep our speakers and our singers far away from the crowd. And so we do things like that. So all of that stuff is has been woven into our way of worship.
Ooh, yeah. Let me transition a little bit to gain some of more of your critical insight at sort of the culture that's taking place in our congregations around COVID. So as you've seen, there's a segment of Christians in our society that have opted to go against mask mandates or refuse to get the vaccine
Mhm.
and or sort of overly spiritualize the pandemic and have politicized this crisis. What do you think these sorts of responses are rooted in?
Well, I think that my friend in Los Angeles, Dr. Manuel Scott Jr., says this is a season of exposure. And I
Mm,
think that what it has done is it has exposed the foundations, plural, of our faith. I think we have to be very careful that our patriotism and our self entitlement and our pride does not overshadow our faith and the best interest of our community. And so I think that many people, their faith has been for so long so mixed in with their patriotism that they can't separate the two. And I think that it is very dangerous to lose sight of the fact that this is a health crisis. People are literally dying across our nation, in our families, and in our neighborhoods. In fact, I've heard some people speak as though a few people dying is okay. No, one death is too many. And
right.
so one death is too many, Doc. One death is too many. And so I think that people sometimes lose sight of the fact that these kind of occurrences in this kind of pandemic, these kind of plagues in our community, they affect the most vulnerable the worst. And our communities, the African American communities, our communities are often, if not always, the most impacted by these kind of plagues, these kind of pandemics, these kind of diseases that come that are released into the world. So I think that people, I think it has exposed the fact. It has exposed the fact that that many of us are more interested in patriotism, more
Mhm,
interested in our own self entitlement than
mhm,
we are in the principles of faith and of the gospel. And
mhm,
so many of us are willing to walk by the man in the ditch and leave him suffering.
mhm,
And the gospel has called us to be that good Samaritan.
mhm. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, you make a lot of really uh, crucial points there, particularly this notion of patriotism has been long in this country where the tradition of patriotism sort of functions as a central expression of people's faith, you know.
Hmm.
So it's so wrapped up Christianity and patriotism that it's hard to untether the two, to really diagnose them separately because they're intertwined. And it just seems like there's a segment of our society and a segment of those who identify as Christians who are participating in a death cult, right? You know what I mean? In the sense of like, where they're willing to sacrifice people for the sake of the economy, to open back up. So they're like, okay, it doesn't matter if X amount of people die as long as the economy opens up, or they're willing to, sacrifice other people's safety and health so they can go and eat at a restaurant, right? I mean, it's just such a deep selfishness, being expressed by those who identify with a selfless person in the person of Jesus. You know what I mean? So it's like counter um, such a countering like what genuine discipleship looks like, and yeah, it's pretty problematic.
If we are truly a Christian nation, then we ought to be even more open to people coming across the border. If we're truly a Christian nation, we ought to we ought to be more open and more active in eliminating situations of poverty and insecurity in our own nation. If we are truly a Christian nation, we need to get our capitalism under control so that it doesn't leave so many people behind while it promotes the wealth and interest of only a few. If we are really a nation under God, then we need to begin to live like and conduct our lives in a way that really represent the principles of faith.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But we're not a Christian nation, and we have never been. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, we claim to be one, but you're exactly right. I mean, I'm gonna actually throw another question in there that wasn't a question I sent over, but you mentioned about folks coming across the border. Where oftentimes when we think about immigration, we most notably think about our Latino sisters and brothers coming across the southern border, but we also know that what's happening in Haiti, and there's a lot of Black immigrants who immigrate to this country as well. And so you have history going to Haiti as a missionary. So how did that this recent crisis that we saw at the border, how did that affect you personally?
Well, my heart was broken for them. My heart was broken for them because my experience is that many times in countries like Haiti and Jamaica, people have a skewed understanding of what it's truly like to live in America, especially as a Black man. And so America is not a place where we have streets paved with gold. It is living in America is not equal for everyone. And so many times you go to these countries and they really the narrative is so skewed that people really believe that if I can just make it there, that it's the promised land and everything will be okay. And so my heart just goes out to them. They risk their lives. They risk the lives of their families. They took tremendous risk in hoping to find this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And when they got here, they found out that the pot of gold wasn't the pot of gold that they expected. And this country is responsible for that narrative. They're responsible for that narrative, and so it was just deep. It was just painful because I've been to Haiti several times, and I understand a little bit about what they're trying to escape from. But the truth is that we have some of that same tyranny here in America.
That's right.
We have some of that same tyranny here in America.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, you hit a lot of points there. That's definitely true. Yeah, America has done just such a I don't want to say outstanding because that's connected to something positive, but they've done an outstanding job at propagandizing itself and creating a mythology about itself. So folks in other countries may view us in a particular way, thinking that if they just get here, then things will be all right for them. But then they're met at the border with folks on horses and whips, like this is the 19th century all over again. And on mine, I mean, I've never had the opportunity to go to Haiti or Jamaica. I'm just one is just it pulled on my heartstrings just as a human being, as a Black person in particular, to see. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, we kind of pause for a second there.
Yeah.
But I was just really, also just disappointed in the Biden and Harris administration for how they handled that crisis. I mean, that
Mhm.
they handled it in such a way, something that you would expect from the previous administration. And so
Mhm.
it just goes to show that the need to continue to organize and place pressure on our elected officials, even if you think that
Mhm.
they might, be better than a previous administration.
Right.
They completely botched that with our Haitian sisters and brothers who were coming across to escape calamity and crisis.
Yeah. So let me say very quickly. So when I go to Haiti, I'm not um, in a comfortable hotel. I'm going to places in the outer parts in the bush in different areas of Haiti in order to do ministry.
Mhm.
When I go to Jamaica, same thing. I have never been in a resort in Jamaica. And I've always I've been driven past the resorts, and I drive about three hours up into the hills up near Manchester and a place called Craighead near Christiana in Jamaica. So the ministry that we do here at our church in those areas is in the inner part of those nations.
Okay, yeah, that's a good distinction because when folks like, oh, Jamaica, they think that you at a resort ministering and suffering for the Lord on the side of the pool.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Let's ask these next two questions, and then and I have another question I want to pose to you as well. But so you talked about Manuel Scott Jr. Saying this is a season of exposure. So
Hmm.
pandemic has exposed so much about how our society does not meet the most basic needs of vulnerable people, and we
Right.
often hear about sort of a return to normal, but normal is not working for a lot of folks. So for you, what does a new normal look like that reflects genuine care for one another?
Well, I think that for the church, we have to expect that God has created a platform for a new normal. I don't think we'll ever be able to do church, worship, or ministry in the ways that we did before. And there were a lot of ways, a lot of things about the way that we've done church and ministry over the last 100 years that needed to change. And
Mm,
so I'm excited about that. One thing it's done for the church is that it has forced believers to develop their personal relationship with the Lord and not have the church carry it for them and hand it to them every Sunday morning. And
mhm,
so I think it has forced us to seek God in a very personal and intimate way, to focus in on our personal relationships with the Creator and walk with Him in a very intimate and close kind of way. And so I think that we have to be prepared. The new normal is still yet developing. And for instance, here's what it showed Rising Star. Our building has been too small for a long time. And we've gotten comfortable with the fact that our building is too small. And so what we really need to do is find a broader space in order to do ministry. And so it's forced us into doing some things that we would not have normally done in the past. And it's forced us to really it's forced individuals to really set priorities about their relationship with God and versus their concern about uh, they're concerned about secular activities. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Is God really a priority in our lives? And many people are passing the test, and many people are more determined than ever to serve God and worship Him in spirit and in truth. But many people have fallen away from the church. That's because they were members of the organization, but they may not have been connected to the organism. And what God really wants from us is to be in relationship with us. The organization is one thing, but in relationship with God is another. And so I think the new normal is our ability to not just worship on Sunday, but to live a lifestyle of committed worship, to become the creatures of faith that God has called us to be, so that our faith is lived out in our humanity.
Yeah, no, that's good. How is that new normal for kind of within the Christian discipleship for you? How is that going to be reflected in society at a larger systemic level? So we saw during COVID, right? People, we have to do the rent protections. Our folks are about to get booted out of their places. We've seen houselessness on the rise during the pandemic. We've seen increases in crime as resources were drying up. What do you think the new normal should look like at a structural level? So we got the church level, and then what do you think
Mhm.
about the structural level?
Well, I think that we have to on the structural level. I think we have to do a better job of investing in our communities and bringing people to a place where they are able to not just survive but thrive economically in our communities and have the training and resources that they need to live well, because the structure of our economy is also changing.
Yeah, no, that's real. Yeah, that's real. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, yeah. COVID, ex, COVID exposed capitalism once again. Like, and I don't know if folks are really like tracking, but how much wealth
Mhm.
1%, you know, garnered for itself, while the majority of everyone else was struggling to pay their bills and had to
Mhm.
get bailed out by the government in different ways. The elite Bezos' wealth increased by X amount of percent. I mean, they went off and blew a rocket into space at the same time. You know what I mean? While folks are getting booted out on the streets, and it's just it's wild. And I hope that folks in the church and people of different faiths and folks in the country are paying attention to what God is doing around exposing the
Mhm.
fault lines and fractures and fissures in society, for us to really create something new, where everyone is can be invited into a table of mutual flourishing, where it's not
Right, right.
one group flourishing based upon another group's destruction and
Right.
subjugation.
Mhm.
I think COVID provided an opportunity for us to begin to have that honest conversation and move beyond that. But once again, America, failed the test. Thus far,
Yeah.
has failed the test. We'll see kind of how things go going forward. But we're more divided than ever. You know,
Absolutely, absolutely. Justice for all is still a challenge in this country.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. So this last question you kind of answered a little bit. I was going to ask, what do you think the long-term effects of COVID will be on how the church gathers in worship and bears witness in the world? Um, if you want to add to that, the last response you really talked about this notion of discipleship, personal connection, and the different changes that your congregation in particular made around worship and the way it made you all think about doing some things different going forward. Did you want to add to that at all, or?
No, I just think the church it has literally forced the church to live out our faith in a personal context. And that evangelism, for instance, when we talk about evangelism now, we're absolutely more important than having a table at a grocery store or having a table in front of a Walmart or a Target. Evangelism needs to be on a daily basis in your personal conversations with people that you are already around. That is your Jerusalem. You need to begin to witness and begin to share your faith with people in your natural conversations and in your natural habitat, on your job or at lunch or in the yard with your neighbor, but around your table, because many of us have family. So when you have family members that need to hear the gospel. So when you're talking about evangelism, for instance, just as one example, how does the church do evangelism now? We used to do night walks. We used to go out in the street and meet strangers. Well, we can still do that to some degree, but people are not as comfortable with us walking up on them as they used to be. And so you have to be conscious not only of your own protection, but you also have to be conscious of the people that you're approaching, because they also have a right to their own space. And so but I think that the evangelism is really about building relationships. And so this forces the church to build relationships in the world that will allow us to share the plan of salvation with others. That's really the goal of the church. And in the process of sharing that, we also need to be a source of wisdom, a source of information that will help people in our communities connect to resources that will help them to live a better quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's real. Yeah, that's real. Particularly that last part about connecting folks to resources is so crucial, and I feel like that's a component of evangelism that congregations often miss. Is that
Mm-hmm.
part of our bearing witness in the world and proclaiming a resurrected Savior is to connect, is to help facilitate a life-giving culture, right, where people
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
mired in poverty and debt and destruction and these different sorts of things. And so like the personal conversion and the conversations around discipleship are also connected to the systemic conversations of how discipleship is expressed to help facilitate greater health amongst our population. And so I appreciate that answer. And I know Rising Star has been on the front lines of evangelism and ministry in the city in many ways. Would you consider? I mean, because when I think about your own evangelism, you mentioned Haiti and Jamaica and sort of discipleship, but I think often about your vocal evangelism in Fresno about how does Fresno become a more equitable place. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So I think about your evangelism, like that's what comes to mind more
Mm-hmm.
so than even sort of like the kind of personal conversations with folks. I mean, that's important, you know what I mean? As
Mm-hmm.
of the gospel, that's critically important. But that other side of that, which I think that you and others in the city have really done, is helping to facilitate a discussion of power in the city.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Absolutely.
I think that's really critical to evangelism
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Cool. Well, Pat, I don't have any formal more questions for you. And this ended a little sooner than I anticipated. You're usually a little bit more long-winded.
Well, I tried to be respectful of your time and and not take over the conversation.
Nah. Yeah. So for folks who tuned in, hopefully this was helpful for you. This is part two of a conversation around COVID-19 and an ethic of care for the church. This is Pastor B.T. Lewis, who's worked really closely with Faith in the Valley and with Faith in Community prior to its inception as Faith in the Valley as well. This is the question I was going to ask you, actually, the concluding question, Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw in your bio, we've had these conversations around the clergy caucus that you formed, the African American clergy caucus that you formed.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Sort of just sharing a little bit about the vision of for that caucus, what prompted you to maybe pull it together, or what you are hoping to accomplish and achieve through that mechanism.
Yeah. We pulled that together because, and also let me mention this, that another thing we did in our congregation, which we'll do again tonight, it was birthed out of the need to stay connected with our congregation. And we have what we call the Thursday night check-in. And so tonight we'll have a general opportunity for our members to log in on Zoom. And it's really about giving an update on COVID as much as we have information as we have gathered during the week, and then to see how people are doing, and then of course do a brief lesson related to encouraging them to as they navigate through these very tenuous situations in their families. Well, same thing with the African American clergy caucus here in Fresno. It was birthed out of the need to meet with our pastors. Our experience in the African American community, we learned very early, was unique in the city in regard to COVID-19. And as you know, many of the people in our community have still not been vaccinated. And so we wanted to have a forum where we could help to retrofit our churches, our lifestyles, and to help to build harmony in our community in regard to how do we fight this disease? How do we protect our elderly? How do we protect our babies? How do we protect our community? So it was really an effort to bring speakers in and to bring presenters in that would give us good, solid information about COVID-19 as we were learning it on the fly. And through that organization, we promoted and our collaboration with other groups in the city, including the city, county, health department, the African American Coalition, and others. We were able to set up testing sites, vaccine sites, make recommendations to pastors on retrofitting, visit each other's sites, and just kind of talk about what we can do to keep our congregations and our community safe, because our congregations are actually literally part of the community. And so, all these folks are related, Doc. It's and so it was important to create that forum, and also it gave us opportunity to build a little power and influence in the city. We were able to write letters and advocate for funding in different areas that would benefit our community and to help our community as we continue to fight this disease.
Yeah, that's good work. That's good work. There's a comment, Pastor Lewis. A sister says, for those who are tuning in, a single mom that lives in Arkansas of 2 kids, lost job due to going out of business in need of food, milk, wipes, diapers, pull-ups, and meds for my son. He has COVID. Please be a blessing for us today. We have nothing, been living in the car due to eviction. I'm at my last, so I'm ready to give up. And I know God is real. If anyone wants to help us, it would be a big blessing. Her Cash App is Goddess T25 for those who might want to donate to help out in the situation that she finds herself in. And I mean, I think that comment that she gave is pointing to what we've been saying about how this pandemic has affected so many folks. She lost her job based upon the economy shutting down and things of that nature. And so many people have been put in a trick bag, and this country doesn't have. We have the money and the resources, but we don't have the will to put mechanisms in place for people to not fall out in such a way to where they're getting kicked out of their homes and not having the things they need to sustain their livelihoods. So yeah, if you would like to donate to, give me sis, I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but Tiana Rush, again, it's Goddess T25 on Cash App. So
amen.
Yeah, Pastor Lewis, thank you for your time. I'm gonna have to bring you back on here again on another topic, non-COVID related, so we can top it up about something else. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. For those who tuned in, this our conversations for the Faith in the Valley Justice interview series are housed on the Faith in the Valley web page. So if you visited the Faith in the Valley web page, you will find under the blog section. You'll find where these conversations are located, and you can go and peruse if you would like to tune in. We've had a lot of really good conversations. I think there's maybe like 12 videos or 13 videos that we have up there that you can look at and maybe learn from or think with. So hopefully it's a good tool, a resource for you to grow your understanding of things. So Pastor Lewis, thank you again. I appreciate you.
Well, God bless you, man. Thank you for having me.
Peace.
All right, take care.